I never thought I'd be the guy telling a story like this. My name is Mike, and I was just your average guy, married to a woman named Corinne for almost 7 years. We lived in a cozy little house in the suburbs, had a dog named Max, and a pretty typical life. But underneath that surface, things were beginning to shift, and I was oblivious to the storm that was brewing right under my nose. The first signs of trouble started coming in small waves. Corinne, who used to be so affectionate and present, began acting distant. At first, I chalked it up to stress from her job as a marketing manager. She'd come home late more often, her excuses ranging from "I had to finish a project" to "the team had a late-night meeting." It felt reasonable enough, but the nagging feeling in my gut kept growing. I started noticing her on her phone a lot more, her laughter echoing from the other room during late-night conversations. I asked her about it, and she always brushed it off, claiming it was just some work-related group chat. I wanted to trust her, but my instincts were screaming otherwise. The real turning point came one fateful Saturday afternoon. I had planned a relaxing day at home, but when I checked the calendar, I saw something peculiar. Corinne had written Prof. Smith in big letters at the top of the day. I remember feeling a twinge of confusion. Professor Smith was her former college professor, the one she always praised for his unique teaching style and enlightening discussions. It struck me as odd that she'd be meeting him now, years after she graduated. I brushed it aside, convinced it was probably a project review or something innocent. Still, the feeling was there, lingering like an unwanted guest. Later that evening, while Corinne was out running errands, I decided to check her computer for anything that might give me a hint of what was really going on. I know it sounds invasive, but the doubt was eating at me. As I flipped through her emails, my heart sank. There it was, a thread between her and Professor Smith filled with flirtatious banter. Comments about how she missed their discussions, how he'd always been her favorite teacher and the killer. "I wish we could catch up over drinks sometime, just the two of us." That was the moment I felt my whole world shatter. I felt a rush of emotions, anger, betrayal, confusion, and sadness all flooded in like a tidal wave. I couldn't believe it. The love of my life, the woman I had built a life with, was cheating on me with a man old enough to be her father. I was furious, but also felt this sense of disbelief. How could she do this? I went into a blind rage, my fists clenching and my heart racing. I knew I had to confront her, but how? When Corinne walked through the door a few hours later, I was ready. I could feel the heat rising in my chest, but I forced myself to stay calm. I confronted her about the emails, my voice steady despite the chaos inside. Her reaction was immediate. She turned pale, then defensive. "Mike, you don't understand. It's not what it seems," she exclaimed. It felt like I was in some twisted drama where the protagonist doesn't see the truth right in front of them. I pressed her for answers, demanding to know how she could betray me like this. Her excuses poured out. She claimed it was just harmless flirting, that I was overreacting, and that I had been so busy with work I'd neglected her. The lies spilled out of her mouth so easily that it made my stomach churn. I felt sick. I couldn't believe I was hearing this from the woman I trusted with everything. The emotional roller coaster was just beginning. Those initial moments of confrontation left me feeling hollow. I didn't know what to think. How could someone I loved so deeply betray me so casually? It was as if the world around me had turned gray. My mind raced through a whirlwind of memories, wondering if everything had been a lie. The laughter, the late-night talks, the vacations. We had built a life together. I thought we were happy. But was I happy, or had I just been naive? As I sat there, I realized I didn't want to be a victim of this situation. I needed to find my strength again. It was time to take control of my life and craft a plan. But what that plan would be, I had yet to figure out. For now, I had to process what had just happened and figure out my next move. The days following my confrontation with Corinne felt surreal. I moved through life in a fog, going through the motions but hardly feeling present. I'd wake up in the morning, the sunlight filtering through the curtains, and for just a moment I would forget about what had happened. But then the memories would crash back in, like a wave pulling me under. I felt like I was drowning in betrayal, confusion, and rage. I spent hours at work trying to focus on my tasks, but my mind kept drifting back to her. I had thought we had a solid marriage, built on trust and companionship, yet here I was, questioning everything. I often found myself staring at my computer screen, only to be jolted back to reality by a coworker asking if I was okay. I'd nod and fake a smile, but inside I was anything but okay. I had a few close friends I could confide in, but I didn't want to drag them into my mess just yet. I wanted to figure this out on my own. Corinne and I lived in a constant state of tension. She tried to act as if nothing had happened, throwing herself into conversation, joking, and even planning a weekend getaway. It was like she didn't understand the gravity of her betrayal. I could see the blind optimism in her eyes, as if she believed she could charm her way back into my good graces. But for me, things were different. I felt a chasm opening between us, and every forced laugh just widened it further. As time passed, I began to devise a plan. I didn't want to confront her again right away. I wanted to gather more evidence. I needed to know how deep this betrayal ran before making a move. I started tracking her movements, analyzing her excuses for late nights, and how often she seemed to be working late. I even reached out to a couple of her friends casually, trying to gauge if they knew anything. Most were clueless, but one friend, Lisa, dropped a comment about how she had seen Corinne with Professor Smith at a bar downtown a few weeks back. That was the confirmation I needed. One Friday evening, after a long week of gathering intel, I decided to follow her. I knew it was risky, but I felt compelled to see it for myself. I parked my car a few blocks away from the bar Lisa mentioned and settled in, hoping to get a glimpse of the truth. My heart pounded as I watched the entrance, half expecting Corinne to walk out any moment, hand in hand with that smarmy professor. When I finally saw her, it was like a knife had twisted in my gut. She was laughing, her head thrown back in that way I used to adore. But it wasn't me she was laughing with, it was him. They sat close together, whispering, and I could hardly breathe as I watched the scene unfold. I felt like a ghost, haunting the edges of my own life, powerless and invisible. Every moment they spent together felt like salt on an open wound. I watched as she leaned in closer, her body language inviting and familiar, as if there were no secrets between them. I had to remind myself to breathe. I suddenly felt an overwhelming wave of emotions, anger, humiliation, but most of all, a deep sadness for what I had lost. It was all those little moments that flashed through my mind. Our wedding day, the way she would smile when she thought I wasn't looking, the intimate conversations we used to share. All of it felt like a cruel joke now. But I also felt something else, determination. I was done being the passive observer in my own life. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming my power and my identity. I had spent too long feeling like I was not enough, and I was tired of the lies. I realized then that I needed to focus on myself, to channel all this pain into something constructive. I began to formulate a plan, not just for revenge, but for my own success. I started hitting the gym more frequently and enrolled in an online course for project management. I had always wanted to move up in my career but had put it off for Corinne's sake. Now, I was determined to show her, and myself, that I could thrive without her, that I could build a life on my own terms. The more I focused on my goals, the more the anger began to fuel my ambition. I found myself dreaming bigger, visualizing my success, and picturing a future where I was free from the weight of betrayal. I wanted to rise above, to be more successful than both of them combined. It was during one of those late-night study sessions that I stumbled upon an opportunity that would change everything. An old college buddy of mine, Derek, reached out about a job opening at his tech company. They were looking for someone with project management experience, and he urged me to apply. It felt like a sign, a chance to step into a new chapter and finally take control of my life. Little did Corinne know, while she was off enjoying drinks with my old professor, I was gearing up to forge a path that would leave both of them in the dust. The fire was lit, and I was ready to burn bright. As I dove into my new routine, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. I polished my resume, highlighting my previous experiences, and crafted a compelling cover letter that showcased my newfound determination and ambition. I wanted to make an impression, and I knew I had to shine brighter than ever before. My goal was to secure that job with Derek's company, not just for my career, but as a statement to myself that I could overcome this betrayal and thrive. The day of the interview arrived, and I was a bundle of nerves and excitement. I dressed in my best suit, one that I hadn't worn in ages, and made sure to look sharp. As I stood in front of the mirror, I practiced my answers, focusing on my strengths and how I could bring value to the team. This wasn't just an interview. It felt like my first step toward reclaiming my life. When I walked into the office, I was struck by how modern and vibrant it was. The energy buzzed with creativity, and I could see myself fitting in there. Derek greeted me with a wide smile, and I felt an instant relief. He had always been a good friend, and it was nice to have a familiar face on my side as I took this leap. The interview went smoothly. I spoke passionately about my experiences, the projects I had led, and how I planned to contribute to the company's success. But more than that, I spoke about my journey and the lessons I had learned. I poured my heart into that interview, hoping they could see the fire within me. As it wrapped up, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I had given it my all. That evening, I returned home, feeling lighter than I had in weeks. I found Corinne in the living room, scrolling through her phone. She glanced up as I entered, her expression shifting slightly. "How was your day?" she asked, feigning interest as if the world hadn't just crumbled beneath us. "It went well. I had an interview," I replied, trying to keep my tone neutral. "Oh, that's great. Which position?" she asked, her curiosity piqued just a bit. "Project manager at Derek's company," I said, watching her reaction closely. I could almost see the gears turning in her head. "Wow, that's impressive. I hope you get it," she said, but I detected a hint of disbelief in her voice. She had been so wrapped up in her own world that she didn't realize the significance of this moment for me. I smiled, allowing myself to envision a future where I was successful, moving past the betrayal that had once consumed me. After that day, I began to shift my focus entirely. I poured myself into my work and studies, spending late nights drafting plans, studying management strategies, and networking with professionals in the field. I was no longer the passive husband waiting for his wife to validate him. I was becoming someone who was forging his own path. Weeks passed, and the tension between Corinne and me hung like a thick fog. She continued her charade of normalcy, but I could see through it. The lies she had woven were starting to tangle around her like a noose. I would often catch her off guard as I asked casual questions about her day or her plans, and each time I could sense her guilt festering beneath the surface. It felt empowering to know I was aware of the truth while she tried to keep her secrets hidden. Then, one Sunday morning, I received the call I had been waiting for. Derek reached out to deliver the news. I got the job. I was ecstatic, and I couldn't contain my excitement. This was my moment, a monumental turning point that signified my hard work was paying off. As I hung up the phone, I could hardly believe it. I was finally moving on, finally taking control of my life. I rushed to find Corinne, eager to share the news. "Corinne, I got the job," I exclaimed, a genuine smile plastered across my face. Her reaction was less than enthusiastic. "Oh, that's nice," she replied, barely looking up from her phone. I could see the lack of enthusiasm in her eyes. It was like she was more concerned about her own issues than sharing in my joy. "Corinne, this is a big deal. I'm going to be a project manager," I continued, trying to spark some excitement. "That's great, Mike. But don't forget, I have plans this afternoon," she said dismissively. I felt a pang of frustration surge within me, but I quickly reminded myself that I was no longer the man who would let her indifference dictate my happiness. I was reclaiming my life, and I would not let her lack of support dim my light. The more I focused on my success, the more I began to realize how far apart we had grown. I was evolving, and she was stagnant, stuck in her own web of lies and deceit. This realization was both empowering and sobering. It made the decision to confront her again inevitable. I knew I needed to have a serious conversation, to lay everything out on the table. As I prepared myself mentally for this confrontation, I was no longer the defeated husband. I was a man ready to reclaim his worth, a man who had finally awakened. It was time to lay the truth bare and figure out what the future held for both of us, whether it involved separation or a different resolution altogether. I was ready to take that step, ready to face whatever came next. The days leading up to my confrontation with Corinne felt like an eternity. I was filled with a mix of anticipation and anxiety, wondering how she would react when I finally laid everything out on the table. I had been building my own life, thriving in my new job, but the emotional weight of our strained relationship was still heavy on my shoulders. I knew I couldn't ignore it any longer. It was time to get real. One evening after work, I decided it was now or never. I was tired of tiptoeing around the truth. I found Corinne on the couch, engrossed in some reality show that seemed to numb her. I cleared my throat, gathering my courage. "Corinne, can we talk?" I asked, trying to keep my tone calm, though my heart raced with the weight of what I was about to say. She looked up, surprised, and then nodded. "Sure, what's up?" I took a deep breath, feeling the words rise in my throat. "I need to talk about where we stand. I can't keep pretending that everything is okay between us." Her expression shifted, and I could see her brace herself for what was coming. "Mike, no, let me finish," I interrupted, feeling the need to assert myself. "I know about you and Professor Smith. I've seen the emails, and I know you've met him. I can't believe you thought you could hide this from me." Her mouth opened slightly, and for a moment she looked genuinely taken aback. I didn't mean for you to find out like this, Mike," she stammered, her voice shaky. "It's not what you think." I couldn't help but scoff at her response. "Not what I think." "You've been cheating on me, Corinne. You've betrayed the trust we built over years. How could you even try to defend this?" She took a deep breath, her composure faltering. "I was lonely, Mike. You were so wrapped up in your work, and I felt neglected. I didn't mean to hurt you." I felt a fire ignite inside me, fueled by the pain of her words. "Lonely? You think that justifies your actions? There are other ways to handle loneliness. You could have talked to me, but instead you chose to betray me." "Please, Mike, don't do this," she pleaded, tears welling in her eyes. "I'm sorry. I was confused and I made a mistake. We can work through this together." The desperation in her voice took me by surprise. I had expected her to either deny it or lash out, but instead she was apologetic. It might have swayed me once, but now I felt a mix of pity and anger. "Work through this," I replied, my voice rising. "You think I can just forget that you've been sleeping with another man? A man who's supposed to be a mentor to you. I can't trust you anymore, Corinne. How can I rebuild something that's already broken?" She shook her head, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I know I messed up. I was stupid, but I love you. I want us to be a family again. I promise I'll end things with him. Just give me another chance." Her pleas fell on deaf ears. Instead of feeling regret, I felt something shift within me. I had spent too long feeling like I wasn't enough, and now I realized I was more than capable of moving forward without her. "Corinne, I've been working hard to better myself, to establish my own success. I don't need this toxic relationship dragging me down anymore," I said firmly. I could see the realization dawning on her face, the fear of losing me crashing down like a wave. "So, what are you saying?" she asked, her voice quivering. "I'm saying that I'm done. I can't keep living with someone who doesn't respect me or our marriage. I deserve better than this." With those words, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. It was like I had finally taken control of my life and my destiny. Her betrayal had forced me to grow, to realize my worth, and I wouldn't let her take that away from me. "I'm going to move out," I continued, my voice steady. "I'll find a place of my own and give us both some space. Maybe that'll help you realize what you've lost." Her face crumpled as she realized the gravity of the situation. "Mike, please, don't do this. I'll change, I swear," she cried, but I could see through her desperation. I was finally seeing her for who she was, a woman willing to lie to keep her secrets hidden. "I've made my decision, Corinne. It's time for both of us to grow, even if it's apart," I said, feeling a sense of finality. That night I packed a few essentials into my car. As I drove away from the house that had once felt like a sanctuary, I felt a mix of emotions. There was sadness for what we had lost, but more prominently, there was relief and an exhilarating sense of freedom. I had taken a stand for myself, and for the first time in a long time, I felt empowered. I found an apartment in a nearby complex that was perfect for me. It was small but cozy, and the moment I stepped inside, I felt a surge of hope. This was the beginning of a new chapter. I set to work creating a space that felt like mine, a place where I could thrive and focus on the future I wanted to build. As the days turned into weeks, I dove even deeper into my work, learning everything I could about project management. I made new friends at the office and felt a sense of community that had been missing for too long. I was not just surviving, I was thriving, and it felt incredible. Yet, amidst the excitement of my new life, there was still a lingering sense of unfinished business. I needed to confront my past to truly close that chapter. I decided to reach out to Derek and invite him for a drink to discuss my new role and what I had learned since we last spoke. I wanted to thank him for the opportunity and share my journey, but I also needed to know where I stood with him. The thought of confronting the man who had unknowingly played a role in my heartbreak was daunting, but I was ready. I was no longer the victim of my circumstances. I was the architect of my future. And no matter how this conversation went, I was determined to face it head-on. I arranged to meet Derek at a trendy bar downtown that had become a hotspot for young professionals. As I got ready that evening, I felt a mix of anticipation and anxiety coursing through me. I had come a long way since the days when I felt like a shadow of myself, and now I was stepping into this new chapter with confidence. When I arrived at the bar, I spotted Derek sitting at a high table scrolling through his phone. He looked up and waved me over, a broad smile lighting up his face. "Mike, great to see you, man. Congratulations on the new job," he exclaimed as I sat down. "Thanks, Derek. I really appreciate it," I replied, feeling a swell of pride at his acknowledgement. The conversation flowed easily, and I could sense the camaraderie we once shared rekindling. We swapped stories about our respective experiences, and I shared how incredibly empowering it felt to take control of my life after everything that had happened with Corinne. As we chatted, I felt the urge to get to the heart of the matter. I needed to discuss what had transpired between Corinne and me, but I wanted to approach it delicately. "You know, Derek, I wanted to thank you for the opportunity at your company. It's been a turning point for me," I started, gauging his reaction. "Of course. You deserve it, man," he replied, his enthusiasm genuine. "You've always had the skills, I just wanted to help you showcase them." That was my cue. "Well, I also need to be honest about something else," I said, choosing my words carefully. "I found out about Corinne and you and what was happening between you both." Derek's expression shifted, a flicker of surprise passing across his face. "Oh," he said, his brows furrowing. "I didn't know you knew. I'm really sorry, Mike. I never meant for any of this to happen." I took a deep breath. "I appreciate that, but I need to know what you two were doing together. Was it just a few drinks or was it more?" He hesitated for a moment, running a hand through his hair. "It was just drinks at first. She reached out after she graduated and we hit it off. I didn't realize it was crossing a line until later." I felt a mixture of anger and relief wash over me. "You do realize she was married, right? It was a betrayal on both ends." "I do, and I regret it," he said, looking genuinely remorseful. "I didn't want to get caught up in anything messy. I thought it was just harmless fun at first, but it got out of hand." I appreciated his honesty, but it still stung. "I don't hold you solely responsible, Derek. Ultimately, Corinne made her choices and I have to deal with the fallout." He nodded, his expression solemn. "I get that, and I'm truly sorry for the pain you've been through. You deserve better, Mike." That moment felt cathartic. I was confronting not just the betrayal, but also the man who had been an unwitting part of my heartbreak. We finished our drinks, and I could feel the weight of the past lifting off my shoulders. There was no longer any need for anger. I was moving forward with my life, and confronting Derek was just one more step in that process. Over the following weeks, I threw myself deeper into my work, embracing every challenge that came my way. I found myself taking on more responsibilities, leading projects, and even mentoring new hires. Each small victory added to my confidence, and I felt like I was truly becoming who I was meant to be. I found joy in my work that I hadn't experienced in ages. But despite my professional success, there were moments when I thought about Corinne. I wondered how she was coping and if she realized the consequences of her actions. I had moved on, but I couldn't completely erase the memories of our life together. One afternoon, while I was enjoying a rare moment of downtime, I received a text message from an unknown number. My heart raced as I opened it, half expecting it to be a spam message. But when I saw the name, I was taken aback. It was Corinne. "Hey Mike, I hope you're doing well. I'd like to talk if you're open to it." I stared at the screen, my emotions swirling. Part of me wanted to ignore her entirely, to erase her presence from my life completely, but another part of me felt a strange sense of closure was necessary. I had moved on, but I knew we had unfinished business that needed addressing. After a moment of contemplation, I decided to reply. "I'll meet you, but I want to be clear that I'm not looking to get back together. I've moved on." "Understood. Can we meet at that cafe we used to love?" she replied. I agreed. The thought of seeing her again sent a wave of anxiety through me, but I was ready. I had built my life anew, and I felt empowered enough to face whatever she had to say. I knew this conversation wouldn't be about rekindling anything. It would be about seeking closure and making sure I wouldn't carry any emotional baggage into my future. The day of the meeting arrived, and I felt a wave of nostalgia wash over me as I walked into the cafe. It looked the same, with its familiar aroma of coffee and pastries, but everything felt different. I spotted Corinne sitting at a corner table, her eyes scanning the room. When our eyes locked, I saw a myriad of emotions reflected in her gaze: regret, sadness, and a hint of longing. As I approached the table, I felt a mix of apprehension and resolve. This was it, the moment to finally hash things out and close the door on our past for good. I sat down, and as we exchanged greetings, I braced myself for whatever emotions were about to unfold. As I settled into the chair across from Corinne, I felt a cocktail of emotions swirling inside me. There was a sense of familiarity, but also a palpable distance. She looked different, haggard maybe, with dark circles under her eyes, as if the past few months had taken a toll on her. I couldn't help but think how much I had changed since the day I packed my bags and walked out. "Thanks for meeting me," she said, her voice soft and tentative. "Of course," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. "I guess we both have things we need to say." She nodded, taking a deep breath. "I wanted to apologize again for everything. I know my actions hurt you deeply, and I'll never be able to take that back. I've been doing a lot of thinking since you left, and I realize how much I messed up." I studied her for a moment, searching for sincerity in her eyes. "It's good that you're reflecting on your actions, but I'm not here to reopen old wounds, Corinne." "I understand," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "I just wanted you to know that I've taken some time for myself. I've been seeing a therapist and working on my issues. I want to be a better person, not just for myself, but for anyone I might be with in the future." I appreciated her honesty, but I also felt a flicker of anger rise within me. "You had all those opportunities before. You had me, and you chose to throw it away for something fleeting. It's hard to hear you talk about becoming a better person when it feels like you only realized the depth of your choices after the fact." Her gaze dropped to the table, and silence enveloped us for a moment. I could see the regret etched on her features, and it hit me that she was really struggling with everything that had happened. But my sympathy only went so far. I had spent too much of my life feeling like I wasn't good enough, and I refused to let her pain pull me back into that cycle. "I've moved on, Corinne," I continued, my voice steady. "I'm focused on my new job and the future I'm building for myself. I've found a sense of purpose that I didn't have before." She lifted her head, her eyes glistening with tears. "I know I can't ask you to forgive me, and I don't expect that. I just wanted to say that I'm truly sorry for everything. I hope you find happiness, Mike. You deserve it." It was hard to hear those words without feeling a surge of conflicting emotions. On one hand, I wanted to believe she meant it, but on the other, I couldn't forget the pain she had caused. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment settle over us. "Thank you for saying that. It means something, even if it's complicated." We shared a few more moments in silence, almost as if we were mourning the remnants of what we once had. I realized this was a significant turning point, not just for us but for me as well. I was finally shedding the last bits of what was holding me back. Before we part ways, there's one more thing, I said, feeling the need to express my final thoughts. I want you to know that I'm not angry anymore. I've worked hard to let go of that anger and I truly wish you well, but I'm also not looking back. I need to focus on myself and my journey. This is goodbye for me. She nodded, tears rolling silently down her cheeks. Goodbye, Mike. I hope you find everything you're looking for. As I stood up to leave, I felt lighter than I had in months. I had stepped into that cafe as a man who had been wrestling with heartbreak, but I was walking out as someone who had finally found closure. The past was behind me and the future was mine to shape. That evening, I returned to my apartment, filled with a sense of peace. I settled onto my couch, looking around at the space I had made for myself. It was a blank canvas, ready for me to fill it with new memories and experiences. I could finally breathe freely, knowing I had taken control of my fate. In the weeks that followed, my career took off, and I began forming deeper connections with my coworkers and friends. I even started to explore new hobbies, taking up hiking and photography, which gave me a renewed appreciation for life. Each day felt like a fresh start, a step further along my path toward success. This journey wasn't just about revenge or proving myself to Corinne. It was about rediscovering who I was and learning to love myself again. I had finally emerged from the shadows, ready to embrace the future with open arms. As I settled into this new chapter, I learned that sometimes the worst betrayals can lead to the most profound transformations. I was ready to face whatever came next, and I welcomed it all with a sense of hope and determination. The world was wide open, and I was finally free to explore.